All right, so we're diving into this stack of articles and essays all about the power of film. It's funny how easy it is to kind of get lost in a great movie, but I get the feeling you're asking a deeper question here. Something like, can movies actually make us like better people?
That's a fascinating place to start. And honestly, it's a question that's been debated since those very first flickering images,
Hmm.
since film kind of burst onto the scene.
Hmm.
It's remarkable, though, when you think about it. Like, in the grand scheme of things, film is a relatively new art form. I mean, we went from Muybridge's horse photos in the 1870s
Yeah.
to talking pictures, really just in a few decades.
Yeah, it's true. It does feel like this rapid evolution kind of mirrors the invention of the internet, right? Where
Yeah.
you have all these pioneers, Edison, the Lumiere brothers,
Mhm.
just pushing the boundaries of what was possible with this new technology.
Yeah, and just like the early days of the internet, a lot of those early films were, how do I say this? They were rough around the edges, like really experimental.
Yeah.
Imagine filming a play that was basically the extent of it back then. But then filmmakers, they started to realize that film offered something truly unique, a way to manipulate time and perspective, all through editing.
And this is where those Russian filmmakers come in, right? I've always been curious about Sergei Eisenstein and his whole montage theory.
Oh, Eisenstein was a visionary. He really understood that film wasn't just about what you captured on camera, but how you put those pieces together, how you assembled them. A great example of this is something called the Kuleshov effect. You've probably experienced it and not even realized it.
Yeah.
Imagine a horror movie, right? A character walks into a dark room, the music gets tense, they see something just off screen.
And then, bam! The killer jumps out. But it's the editing that actually makes it scary, isn't it?
Exactly. The way those shots are cut together, the sudden close-up, the jarring sound cues, it all works together to trigger a physiological response in the viewer. That's the Kuleshov effect in action. Pure manipulation. But it proves just how powerful editing can be.
It's incredible. It's like magic almost. So while the Russians are busy crafting this new language of film, Hollywood was busy churning out movies, right? What was the driving force behind all those glamorous films from the Golden Age?
Well, the glitz and glamour often overshadowed a really cutthroat business model. Studios in that era, they weren't just making movies, they were running a machine. To understand the Golden Age, you have to understand the studio system. They had everything sewn up, the actors, the directors, even the theaters.
Okay, so how did they manage to control all of that?
It all boiled down to something called block booking. Studios basically forced theaters to buy a whole year's worth of their films, sight unseen. So if you wanted that surefire blockbuster, well, you had to take the flops along with it.
Oh, wow. I can see why they pumped out so many films. But I imagine this focus on quantity over quality eventually had consequences.
Absolutely. Think of it this way. If you're contractually obligated to release a certain number of films each year, are you going to prioritize artistic innovation? Or are you just trying to get people in seats?
Right. Makes sense. And this leads us to a pivotal moment, right? The French New Wave comes crashing in, shaking things up. The French New Wave. Yeah, it does feel less like a wave and more like a cinematic earthquake.
Right. A total rejection of the Hollywood machine. Directors like Truffaut and Godard, they were obsessed with cinema as this personal expressive art form. Forget the studio polish and those tightly controlled narratives. They wanted to capture raw emotion.
Yeah, to experiment with the grammar of film almost.
Exactly.
And that's where auteur theory comes into play, right? The idea that the director isn't just a hired hand, but the true author of a film.
Exactly. And those French New Wave films,
Yeah.
they didn't just talk about auteur theory, they embodied it.
Yeah.
They broke all the rules. Take a film like Godard's Breathless, for example. Jump cuts, handheld cameras, characters talking directly to the audience. It was jarring, it was exciting, and it influenced a whole generation of filmmakers.
I can see how that raw energy, it would have been a breath of fresh air, especially compared to some of those formulaic studio films being pumped out at the time. But Hollywood was on shaky ground, even without the French New Wave, right?
You're right, things were already shifting. Remember that Paramount case mentioned in one of your sources? It basically declared those block booking practices illegal. Huge blow to the studio system's control.
So the studios are losing their grip on theaters. A new generation of filmgoers is hungry for something different. It sounds like the perfect storm for a revolution.
It absolutely was.
Yeah.
And Hollywood, to their credit, they realized they needed to adapt. That's how we get what's called the New Hollywood movement of the 70s. This new wave of young, film-obsessed directors, influenced by everything that came before. The Soviets, the French New Wave, even classic Hollywood itself.
And that's how you end up with iconic films like Jaws, Taxi Driver, The Godfather, films that push boundaries but also drew huge audiences. It feels like this pivotal moment
Yeah.
where film went from pure entertainment to something more substantial.
So artistic.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's the moment film became cinema, right? And I think that's what's so fascinating about your deep dive today. You're interested in how film transcends entertainment and starts to impact us on a deeper level.
That's exactly it. And speaking of impact, one of these articles made a really intriguing argument that film can actually serve as a form of therapy. It sounds a bit out there at first, but the more you think about it.
Let's unpack it.
Yeah.
Think of the emotional experience of watching a film. You're laughing, you're crying, you're on the edge of your seat. Film has this remarkable ability to tap into our deepest emotions and make us feel truly seen.
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely walked out of a movie feeling completely different than when I walked in, sometimes for the better. This article actually breaks it down. It's like 5 specific ways film can help us navigate life's challenges. What was the first one again?
Yes. The first problem film can address is self-pity. You know those moments where we wallow a little too much in our own misery?
We've all been there.
Exactly. But a good dose of cinematic laughter can be the perfect antidote. Think about a film like Bridesmaids. It's hilarious, but it also reminds us that life is messy and unpredictable. Sometimes the best thing you can do is laugh at the absurdity of it all.
It's like holding up a funhouse mirror to our own anxieties. So what's the next problem on the list?
This one hits close to home for a lot of us, carelessness. We all make mistakes, right? But film has this uncanny ability to show us the potential consequences of our actions. Even those seemingly small choices that snowball into something bigger.
It's like those cautionary tales. Except instead of a lecture, it's a gripping narrative that really makes you feel the weight of those decisions.
Precisely. A film like The Diving Bell and the Butterfly comes to mind. It tells the true story of a man who becomes paralyzed and how he learns to navigate the world and connect with others in a new way. It's a powerful meditation on the fragility of life and the importance of appreciating every moment.
Wow. That one definitely stays with you. Okay, that's 2 problems down. What's next?
The third one might resonate with those of us who sometimes get caught up in the, grass is always greener
Yeah.
mentality. It's the lack of glamour problem.
Oh, I know that feeling well. Scrolling through social media, it's easy to start to think everyone else is living these fabulous lives.
And that's where film can step in and remind us that true beauty can be found in the everyday, in the quiet moments of connection and the simple pleasures of life. A film like Roma by Alfonso Cuarón does this beautifully. It's a story about a domestic worker in Mexico City in the 1970s, and it's full of these incredibly moving, intimate moments that remind you of the universality of human experience.
It's about finding the extraordinary in the ordinary, right? Okay, so we've got self-pity, carelessness, lack of glamour. What's problem number 4?
This one feels particularly relevant in our increasingly interconnected yet fragmented world. It's the problem of disconnection. Film has this incredible power to build empathy, to transport us into the lives and experiences of people from all walks of life.
It's like a window into another world, another perspective.
Exactly. And it can be a powerful reminder that despite our differences, we all share the same fundamental human experiences. Think about a film like Parasite. It's a South Korean film that tackles issues of class and social inequality, but it does so in a way that feels both specific and universal.
It's amazing how a film can make you feel so connected to characters who might seem completely different from you on the surface. Okay, we're on the last one. Problem number 5. What is it? Okay, so we've got self-pity, carelessness, lack of glamour, disconnection. That leaves us with one more problem film can help with. What is it?
The last one that the article mentioned is lack of courage. We're often told to play it safe, to avoid taking risks. But film, it can really inspire us, to remind us that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is to stand up for what you believe in, even when it's terrifying.
You know, it's funny you should mention that. I was watching Hidden Figures the other day. The story of those incredible Black female mathematicians who were so instrumental in getting us to space during the space race. Talk about a story of courage and perseverance.
Absolutely. And it highlights another crucial aspect of this whole conversation, representation. Like, who are the heroes we see on screen? For so long, Hollywood has presented a very narrow view of courage, often centered around white male protagonists. But films like Hidden Figures, Black Panther, Wonder Woman, they're challenging those traditional narratives and offering a more inclusive vision of what it means to be courageous.
It's about time, right? And it's not just about showcasing these diverse heroes, but it's about whose stories are being told in the first place. One of the essays you sent over really dug into this idea, and it really struck a nerve with me.
Yeah, it's something we need to keep talking about. For true progress to happen, we need more diversity behind the camera. Writers, directors, producers from all walks of life. That's how we get more authentic and nuanced representations of the human experience on screen.
And for me, that's really what makes film so powerful. It's this empathy machine. It allows us to step outside of ourselves, to connect with other human beings in a way that feels so immediate and profound.
Yeah, and even though we've been focusing on the ways that film can make us better, I think it's also important to remember that it's not always sunshine and roses. Film can be used to manipulate, to reinforce harmful stereotypes, to perpetuate negative ideologies.
That's a really important point. It's not about blindly consuming whatever Hollywood throws at us. It's about being critical viewers, asking questions, and seeking out diverse
I
perspectives.
couldn't agree more. And as we look to the future of film, the rise of streaming, the global interconnectedness of it all, I think that those critical thinking skills are going to be more important than ever.
It feels like we're at this really fascinating crossroads, right? So much possibility, but also a lot of questions about who gets to tell their stories and how those stories are being shaped by the industry.
Precisely. And I think that's a great place to leave this conversation. With a sense of curiosity, a critical eye, and an open heart.
I love that. To everyone listening the next time you settle in for movie night, don't just watch the film, engage with it. Think about how it makes you feel, what it makes you question, and whose story it's telling. You might be surprised by what you discover about yourself and the world around you.